Hi, this is Dr. Kathleen King, and I wanted to speak to an issue that is so common in our community of self-healing and recovery. And that issue is the difference between doing somatic work, doing embodiment work, going inside versus brain retraining. There's a there's often animosity between the two worlds of taking a bottom-up approach or going inside and feeling your feelings and becoming embodied, becoming present, doing movements to become aware of your body, inner parts work, things like that, versus the field of brain retraining, which is often more of a mental world of using creative visualization to shift your biochemistry. And sorry, I have people who feel like brain retraining is wrong, that's bypassing, that's gaslighting. And I have people that feel like just going into the body is indulging the story, and that's wrong. And there's just this like real there's this real issue out there. So I want to speak to that and share a little bit of my own personal story. So I'm a physical therapist, and I grew up being trained somatically to go into the body, do somatic movements, process your emotions, regulate your nervous system through a somatic approach. And I actually tried to do that for many, many years. And for those of you that know my story, you know that I was sick for many, many years, despite being a physical therapist, despite having all of that knowledge. Now, I want to say it wasn't like that was a bad approach, but I definitely was given the advice to start brain retraining much earlier in my healing journey many years ago. And I was like, no, that's not the right way. That's all mental. I'm going to do this through my embodiment work. Well, I went on a journey for many years doing embodiment practices, really coming to know my inner self and my parts and my feelings and all of that. But I didn't recover. In fact, I stayed dysregulated, but I became very self-aware, yet dysregulated. And then eventually, about 5 years ago, I decided that I needed to try that top-down approach and implement brain retraining and functional neurology and work on my creative sense of self. And I had a lot of resistance because with growing up with a trauma history, it felt like gaslighting to imagine my past in this positive way and to see this future self. It really was really difficult for me. But I knew that the somatic route hadn't fixed my issue, and it hadn't resulted in the self-regulation I was seeking. And so I did start the top-down approach of brain retraining, and I did find that my nervous system started to regulate. So I spent about a year doing that, focusing on the top-down approach instead of the bottom-up. And even though I improved in that year and I did get better, I noticed that I still had issues being present in my body, handling relationships. And so then I realized, okay, I need to add back in that somatic approach of bottom up while doing top down. And that's really where I developed my process of brain retraining, which is a combination of the two. It's called ABC Dimensional Shift, where we are doing a top down approach similar to DNRS and Gupta and ANS Rewire, but we also have some bottom up pieces of somatic presencing, breath work, parts work, because eventually we need to be able to do both. So if you're somebody who is just doing brain retraining and you're afraid to do somatics, you might want to think about adding that in. And if you're somebody who's just done somatics and it's like, no, the brain retraining is self-gaslighting, I encourage you to add the brain retraining in, because brain retraining helps us to find a sense of safety inside of us. It helps to create neural pathways of a different perspective of ourself and of our history. That's so important if we're trying to recover from chronic illness and trauma. And the body work, that helps us to have this sense of, I can handle it. Even when symptoms happen, I can be in my body. I can be with the feelings of my past. I can be with these emotions. And so together, they really send messages to the amygdala of safety and really create a more holistic healing. And so I just wanted to speak to the importance of combining both approaches. Now, if you're somebody who's super dysregulated, I actually recommend starting with a top-down approach, just brain retraining. Start with that until you get a little bit more of a spaciousness in your nervous system and calming of the limbic system before you go into the body. And that's how in my community, my Primal Trust community, we have a level 1, a level 2, and a level 3. Level 1 starts with brain retraining. Then we get into some more vagus nerve retraining and somatics before we go into level 2, which is a more of a deeper journey. And that's purposeful because of my own journey and what I saw, the mistakes that I made and what ended up working for me. That's how I created the algorithm. So I just wanted to speak to that. And I hope that helps to clear up some confusion that some of you have between that bottom up, top down, which one's right, which one's wrong. They're both right. And using them together in a particular way can be a really beautiful practice to learn how to implement. So thank you for listening.